Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 21st episode of Crime Over Wine, the only podcast with head-scratching true crime stories that are just better over a bottle of wine. I'm your host, Liam Collins, and this week, my guest co-host is a fellow native New Yorker, and we're going to claim her as that alone because, duh, obviously, why not? My guest co-host this week is Angela Poffenbaugh. Hello, Angela. How are you?
Hi, Liam. I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing awesome, and 21 episodes. We're legal now. That's so
21.
exciting.
Crime Over Wine is legal to drink. Oh my God, you know what that deserves?
What?
That deserves a bottle of wine. We
that
deserve a
sounds
bottle
great.
of wine for that.
Yep, I agree.
So first, let me introduce you to the crime vineyard. So Angela and I first met as reporters right here, where I am, and where Angela is too, right now in Chattanooga. She actually trained me, y'all, when I first moved here, and now she's working communications through the company lab, which helps startup businesses right here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah, no, honestly, our lives have changed so much, Liam, since we first met each other,
yes.
Because we were waking up at 2:33 in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays when we met each other.
Oh, God.
And
Don't
we were
remind
just
me.
struggling so hard. And now we're getting 8 hours of sleep and having so much fun drinking wine on a podcast.
I don't know about 8 hours, but I'm definitely getting more sleep than when I was waking up at 2:30 a.m. on a Saturday. And I'll tell you, Angela, I don't know if I've told you this story, but I'm going to tell you anyways. My lowest point of waking up for that weekend morning shift was when I was getting up and I was leaving for work, and I noticed that one of the sorority girls who live in my apartment complex was coming home for the night. And that was when I was this can't happen anymore. I was it was a low point for me for sure. So.
Yeah, it's weird to drive past bars and see people doing last call or leaving bars as you're going into work. It's very surreal, like Alice in Wonderland.
Didn't like that.
No.
Yeah, did not like that at all. So, Angela had a bit of a request for her appearance in this episode. She wanted to pick out our wine of the week. So, obviously, I had to let Angela do that because, she's Angela Poffenbaugh. So, Angela, I'll let you introduce our wine.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm such a wino, and I really wanted to find a fun one. So, I actually went to the Seafood Festival. It was their first ever one in Chattanooga, and they had free wine tastings. So, I tried multiple wines. I kept your preferences in mind, Liam. You like dry wines. I'm also a dry girl.
True.
And I found this phenomenal Chardonnay. So this is called Tempest. It's technically made from a California grape, but the winery that sells it and distributes it is called Broken Anchor Winery. And they're about an hour and a half southwestish near Atlanta from Chattanooga. And Liam, I also thought this was really fitting for you. They named their wine Tempest after their dog. The owners did. And you're a dog dad. And they were just we just love our dog so much. We just wanted to name our most popular wine after him.
Listen, I love three things. You know this about me. I love my crime, I love my wine, and I love my rescue pups. So this is that in a bottle too. So I'm looking at the back too. So it is with hints, and I'm gonna start opening it because I don't want to waste one single extra second without drinking this. So I'm looking at the back, and it says hints of ripe pineapple, mango, and vanilla, which is super crazy. I've never heard of pineapple in a wine before, so I'm really interested to see how they incorporate that.
Yeah, they didn't even tell me that when I bought the bottle and asked them for the description because I said, I'm going on a wine crime podcast. But what they did say is that it is a really unique flavor, but even though it has all these fruity, citrusy tastes in it, it's really not super sweet. That's what they liked about it. It's pretty dry for those dry wine lovers, but it's not overly dry either.
Well, we're about to find out, I think, because I think of Chardonnay, I think of oaky Chardonnays, buttery, and so I'm wondering how they're gonna incorporate that in with the pineapple and mango, because those are some very different flavors there.
Well, I appreciate you letting me choose the wine. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for wanting to do that, and cheers to you. Thank you for wanting to come on the podcast.
Cheers.
So happy to see you.
Okay, now that you said pineapple, I kind of taste it.
Wow. Oh, I definitely taste the pineapple, and it's really good, y'all. That is some good pineapple wine right there.
It's good. And like I said, it's citrusy, but it's not too sweet, which I really like. It's a good summer wine.
It is a really good summer wine. And now I'm trying to each sip, I'm okay, do I taste pineapple? Do I taste mango? Do I taste vanilla? And the answer is yes to all three. But it's also with all those flavors too, you're getting the very traditional oaky, buttery Chardonnay flavors too. So it's really a very fascinating blend of stuff that you got going on here, but it's like still a Chardonnay, like to its core.
Yeah, like chicken, I feel like, if you like
Mm-hmm.
pineapple and chicken, this is the perfect wine to
Oh
pair some
yeah.
chicken.
Oh yeah. I'm going to give this 2 thumbs up here, guys. Like if you guys are in, Ackworth, Georgia, this is a winery that you're going to want to check out because it's called bottled by Miramont Estate Vineyards in Linden, California for Broken Anchor Winery in Ackworth, Georgia. Okay, so if you're in California or Ackworth, Georgia, this sounds like the kind of wine you're gonna want to at least try out because there are some really fascinating flavors in there that I'm really, really into.
Yeah, and the Georgia winery supports veterans too. So you're supporting veterans and
Mm.
you're supporting locals. So 3 in 1.
Love that. Yeah, you got it all. You got it all. So, Angela, let's transition now over to the story because, man, oh man, like I went into such a rabbit hole researching this one. And so I just need to talk about it. I need to.
I'm so ready. I'm so excited.
So, Angela, this week's story is a true head scratcher, and it's another one of those stories that needs your attention right now, wherever you're listening to this podcast. A 5-year-old girl seems to vanish within minutes and hasn't been seen since. This week, Angela, I want to tell you the story of Summer Wells and the open basement door. Angela, this week we're going to start our story not too far from where we are both sitting right now. We are going to travel to Hawkins County, Tennessee. It's just west of Johnson City and a little more than an hour northeast of Knoxville. 5-year-old Summer Wells, her mother Candace, and her grandmother are just finishing up planting some flowers and some pots in the backyard on the evening of June 15th, 2021. Almost 2 years ago, exactly from when you all will be listening to this episode. And although Summer is planting flowers with her mother and grandmother, that doesn't sum up her personality like really at all. You're probably picturing, this very wholesome, traditional, young girl. That is not Summer, y'all. Summer's mother describes her as the true boss of the boys, the one who truly runs the house, filled with her mother, father, and 3 older brothers. She's a tough, rambunctious little girl filled with energy who truly marched to the beat of her own drum. And in that respect, Summer, I can only imagine, is just like any other 5-year-old girl I've ever met. She truly just tries to hog up all of the attention and succeeds at it every single day. Easy to do for mommy and daddy's little girl.
I like that though, that she's a little kick butt girl and she likes to put her foot down in the world. I can relate. She tries to make her mark.
And I'm one of 4. Like I have one sister too. Like she's the oldest, but I know that's not easy. You know what I'm saying? So good for her. Seriously, good for her for knowing really easy early on in her life that nope, I'm in charge. I call the shots, and y'all are gonna have to listen to me. So you go, girl.
Yeah, and it sounds like she's very confident. She has
yeah.
a lot of certainty, even though she is so young. So I'm curious to see where this story goes, since it is revolving around her, because she doesn't sound shy and scared and timid.
No, not at all. But Summer decides that she's done planting flowers and she wants to go inside to play with her 3 older brothers. And Candace agrees. Candace walks Summer to the back patio door to get Summer to wash her hands. When they get inside, Candace tells her other sons to watch Summer, and Candace goes back outside to finish the job. And then she says that she goes on a short walk. When Candace gets back to the house just a few minutes later, she asks the boys where Summer went, to which they reply that she went downstairs to play with some of her toys. So Candace calls Summer to come upstairs, but there was no answer. That's super strange to Candace because Summer always at least acknowledges her when she calls to her, so she calls out again. But there's still no answer. At this point, she goes downstairs to the basement to check on Summer, but she is nowhere to be found.
That's so interesting. First off, she literally goes on a short walk, and it sounds like it was no more than 5 or 10 minutes. I have no idea,
Yeah.
But a short walk, I assume, that doesn't leave a lot of time to, I don't know, just take someone and not leave any evidence, I don't know. It's weird.
Listen, anyone who listens to this podcast, knows my infamous side eye. This is my first side eye. And I really don't know what to make of this walk, because there's also some, like, in some stories that I read, there were like references to this walk, but in other stories there weren't. And so
Mm.
I'm wondering, like, where the miscommunication came from. Like, maybe she never even said that she went for a walk. Like, maybe that was just a narrative that just like got out there. And like, even if she does go for a walk, like, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what was the point of that, like, 5 minute walk, when, like, again, we're gonna get to like what happens like in this 5 minute walk, but like it feels like a very like weird time that like this, like, it's a very short period of time for like something very, very bad to happen, and like she's just on a walk.
Yeah, so you may not know the answer to this question, but was there someone to like verify that she was on a walk? Like, can someone back up her story?
Well, so again, it's like I saw like mixing like signals as to whether or not she was actually on a walk. Like in some stories, like she was on a walk, in some stories she was just outside like planting flowers. So like, and again, remember, grandma's still there. And I don't know if Don, the Summer's dad, is at the house at this point. But like like the whole story kind of like comes together at some point. But again, there's just like mixed messages kind of coming from like how the whole story kind of came into place. I don't know. It just feels like this is like such an important period of time for us to be like really just not be like 100% sure about what happened here. So yeah, I just have a lot of questions.
A lot.
So Candace calls out for her husband, Don, to come help her. And when Don gets downstairs, she sees the same thing that Candace sees, an empty basement and no sign of Summer at all. But he does note something to police later on, though. He notes that the basement door is wide open, and they both assume that that must have been how Summer was able to exit the house somehow.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. The basement door was open. And from what I saw, Summer on like their bio on her website for her missing, she's a pretty short little 5-year-old. Like, could she have reached the door handle?
I mean, it's possible she could have reached it, but like, I don't know. I feel like she probably could have reached it, but I don't really know for sure, like, how like a 5-year-old knows. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to like put myself in her shoes, because I think she could probably figure out how to open the door, but it's also really unclear as to whether or not like the door was already open, or like did she open the door? Did somebody else open the door? So like that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the website that her family made for her, or whoever made it for her, the one for Summer Wells, says she's 3 feet tall. So 3 feet tall is like kind of reaching a door handle, but I don't know. Anyways, just putting that out there.
Well, so Don and Candace run out of the basement door screaming out for Summer, but there's no trace of her there either. So they call police around 6:30 that night to report her missing. So police show up and look around the home and see what Don and Candace are seeing, a practically untouched house outside of that open basement door. But there's no sign of Summer. So right away, they deploy a massive search effort for this beautiful little 5-year-old girl. They're using canines, aerial support, and swim teams. And that night, police issue an endangered persons alert.
Okay, endangered persons alert. Dumb question, but how is that different from an Amber Alert?
Not a dumb question at all, Angela. It's a little bit more generic, though. An endangered persons alert covers a wide range of possible situations to any age of person, whereas an Amber Alert is specifically for child abduction. So I think that does tell you a lot about what the initial thought was behind Summer's disappearance. But police do eventually issue a statewide Amber Alert the next day, which automatically triggers the FBI to get involved.
I think we got that Amber Alert because we are both in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, I sure do. Yeah. And so police from across the state and even agencies from Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina descend upon Ben Hill Road to start this massive search for Summer Wells. 1,100 volunteer and paid searchers end up showing up to Hawkins County, and that doesn't even include the police officers from more than 100 different agencies. And as that search went on, I wanted to know a little bit more about where this search was taking place. So I actually asked a friend for help. You may remember Ashley Boley from episode 14, the Teresita Bassa case. She used to be a reporter at WVLT, the CBS affiliate in Knoxville, and she covered this case for weeks. And so I asked her to describe a bit about where the Wells family home was and what it was like in the surrounding area.
The area where Summer Wells lived was very rural. It was so rural that when I got off the interstate to go toward the family's home in the Beach Creek community, I would pass a gas station close to the interstate. And it took about 20 to 30 minutes down rural, windy roads to get to her family's home. It was out in such a rural area that there was nothing but land out there. You didn't pass a school. You passed a couple churches, but otherwise no grocery stores, no post offices, nothing. The area of her family's home was mountainous and filled with thick brush, really dense. Each day, different agencies who were searching for her would describe how thick and jungle-like this mountainous forest was that they were combing through, looking to find any clue of summer. It was quiet out there. You couldn't hear sirens, anything that sounded like you lived in a city. There was nothing that made you feel like you had close access if there were an emergency. No hospitals, nothing nearby. You can think a little bit like farmland, but more of a mountainous, rugged terrain that was steep and vast.
Okay, so my first thought is there's no way a little 5-year-old could just run away. Like, obviously it's not a runaway child situation. And, you know, two, if Candace was gone for 5 minutes, someone theoretically came in through the basement door, snatched Summer, and took her. It sounds like it's pretty hard to run away and leave no evidence going through a brush, essentially, in that short of a time period. And it also sounds like there's not much noise. So, like, if Summer screamed or something, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of questions after hearing that description.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, and I think you bring up some really good points. And, like, you know, especially because the reason I wanted to hear about, like, kind of where she, like, kind of have someone who, like, has been there describe this home and, like, the surrounding area is because I, like, kind of, like, I guess I wanted to give, like, some you know, understanding of, like, what, you know, of course, what searchers, you know, these crews are dealing with and looking for her, but also to think about, like, would a little girl, like, be running through that, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where my mind goes, is like, sure, like, I could see, like, maybe a little bit of an adventure, but, like, this sounds dangerous. Like, this sounds like, you know, this terrain, like, isn't necessarily something that, like, you and I, you know, adults would go through and, like, feel safe.
No.
Like, I would imagine, like, all sorts of wildlife is out there, and so it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't really feel like this is, like, and, like, sure, like, 5 years old, you don't know what what kind of dangers the world holds, like, sure, but it still feels like there is, like, a certain level of like scaredness still to that, like, a little, so, like, again, like, just hearing Ashley describe that, I'm like, I don't see a little girl wanting to be out there and not feeling immediately terrified.
Yes, and you and I have also covered stories of, like, hikers or adults that get lost in terrain like that, because Tennessee has, you know, that beautiful landscape.
Yeah, right.
But that being said, with 1,100 volunteers and all those police officers, just how would they not find a runaway little 5-year-old?
At some point,
you know?
Yeah. And that's exactly where my mind was going too. It was like, if this is really what happened to her, that she just ran out the door and, like, went on an adventure, like, at some point, like, even if, like, frankly, even if, like, the worst happened, right, like, some sort of animal got to her, like, you find some trace of that.
Yeah.
And so the fact that, like, we are, again, like, spoiler alert, like, 2 years out from, like, where, like, when this all happened, and we still have not found a single trace of Summer, that is red flags to me all over the place. But then on the same token too, like, this kind of terrain, like, assuming we're talking about somebody who, like, you know, came and took her, what, how can they get away with no trace either? Yeah, and, like, also with, like, this teeny tiny little window, and, like, why that house? You hear about kids getting, you know, snatched in crowded areas. You don't hear about kids getting snatched in these, like, super remote parts of the country where, like, nobody can hear you scream.
Right, and it makes me think that it's either someone who already knew the terrain, knew the land, knew the layout, essentially, almost, so they could make it very quick, because let's be honest, if you or I went in that terrain and tried to run away after our dogs in the brushes, we'd be fumbling, we'd be bloody, we'd be crying, like, it's nothing for a stranger. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have found, you know, a piece of clothing, like you would have found something by now, you know?
Right.
And so it's just like, it just gives me all sorts of red flags. And so, you know, kind of like what we're like, you and I are thinking, right? At this point, Angela, you know, right away, Dawn and Candace assume the worst has happened to their daughter. They say it just isn't like her to wander off on her own, saying flat out that they think that Summer was abducted. But that begs an obvious question, right? By who? All while police officers are scouring through the woods and remote areas where the Wells family lives, even using dive teams to search through nearby water sources, investigators eventually get a pretty good tip. State investigators say publicly that a person who travels through the area regularly for his job said they saw a red Toyota pickup truck on the evening of either June 14th or June 15th. So investigators put out a notice asking for the driver of this red pickup truck to come forward for them. They said that the truck had a full bed ladder rack along with white buckets in the truck bed. Now, police say they don't believe this driver is a suspect necessarily, but just simply a possible witness. They think the driver of this truck may have seen something in the area that night that may help them find Summer Wells and or the person responsible for taking her.
Okay, so interesting and also very hopeful because you said it's a very rural area. So, and again, we've covered these areas here in our part of the woods of Tennessee, and it's hard to find eyewitnesses. It's really hard in those rural areas.
And this kind of like specific like thing, like very rural area. So it's like, I can't imagine there are a ton of trucks that match that description. So like you said, very good news here.
Yeah, because these populations are small. Like when in these rural towns, they really do mean like rural towns. And again, like it's just everyone knows everyone. It's that very small town culture. So that's very, very optimistic that it's a red Toyota or a red pickup truck, because it's like, great, like who are the three people that own a red pickup truck in town, you know?
Right. Well, and like they talked about like the full bed ladder rack, and so they even put out like pictures of this truck, obviously, like or like what the truck possibly looked like. So like that, again, like there just can't be a lot of people in this, like, you know, in Hawkins County, Tennessee, that have this. So so this just feels like a good tip.
Yeah.
But it's also too, like, I'm wondering about this other guy who like travels through the area a lot. Like,
right.
Like, what do they think of him?
I was like, is that guy alone like someone they should ask more about?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But okay, but they know the truck. Okay, so they have a good description. So I assume they're able to find the driver, correct?
Well, no, Angela, unfortunately. The driver of this red Toyota pickup truck never comes forward even to this day. And it is kind of odd because, sure, like this is Tennessee. I'm sure there are a lot of red Toyota pickup trucks on the road. But like we said, like a very specific description in a very rural part of the state. So how could the driver of this truck not know police were talking about them and come forward to share what they know? Like that alone to me screams that this is probably our guy.
Yeah, or he has to know something going on. Because, again, like, if you see it going on, and there's no way you could have missed it. Again, we're hours away in Chattanooga, and we knew about this when it was starting to blow up.
Yeah, so true.
Again, like, the Amber Alerts go to everyone's phone, and nowadays, everyone has a cell phone. So, why would you not want to come forward and just say, I drove by, I didn't see anything. Like, that's so weird.
Well, and to me, again, like I said, like that to me, like either says like this is the guy who's probably responsible, like probably a suspect or at least a person of interest of some kind. Or my other thought here is like made up, like maybe this like driver or this truck never even existed. Like that's another possibility.
I never even thought about that angle, but yeah, it could be someone that doesn't even exist. I mean, I want to know if people went around the town and said, do you know someone that owns a red Toyota pickup truck? And if townspeople were like, oh, totally. Or if they were like, what?
And you know what's crazy is because like I remember like when I was early enough in my career, like because this happened like right as I moved to Chattanooga, right? And so like I was early enough in my career and I was in the newsroom and I picked up and I got a call like right as they released the description of this truck, and I like from people again down here in Chattanooga saying, oh, I saw someone with a red pickup truck, and I was like. At the time, I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, okay, like, I don't really understand, like, what was going on, because I didn't really know the story all that well. Like, I wasn't following it. Like, I didn't know the area. And so now I'm like, oh, like, this, like, clearly had enough reach that, like, people, like, again, 2-3 hours away were, like, had an eye out for a pickup truck. So point being, to what we were just talking about, like this person who was driving this red pickup truck, assuming that they exist, like, doesn't watch the news, like, doesn't know they're looking for a person with a red pickup truck. Like, you would think that, like, if you frequent Hawkins County, Tennessee, and you drive a red pickup truck that you heard that they're looking for that person, like you would at least want to like come forward and be like, hey, by the way, it wasn't me.
Yeah, these small towns are tight. Like everyone knows everyone. And if someone goes missing, those small towns rally together so freaking hard. That's just so out of character. That's really suspicious.
Yeah, very suspicious. And police really have nothing to go off of at this point. They are even asking the public, neighbors in the area, to look through surveillance video that they may have or trail cameras, anything that may point them in even a general direction of where Summer may have gone. And it's around that time that something happens that probably points police in a totally different direction. And in my personal opinion, totally rightfully so. In July, just about a month after Summer went missing, the State Department of Children's Services takes custody of Don and Candace's other 3 boys.
Interesting. Because usually when the Department of Children's Services takes someone's kids, it means they've been watching that family for a little bit. Like there's been like warning signs, right?
Yeah. Or something crazy happens, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, because like, and we're going to get to like what may or may not have happened in just a second. But like, you know, for example, like, well, let me not even get there because I can't even talk about it without like giving it with this next part away. So let me just get to the next part.
Okay.
So DCS never says why, and neither do Don and Candace really. Don at one point alludes to it potentially being tied to like a really drunken incident at the home on the podcast J is for Justice, but even that is like not totally 100% clear. But it's still odd, right? I mean, clearly something serious had to have happened, assuming that this is totally unrelated to Summer's disappearance, or maybe they suspect them of something a little more nefarious. So to be clear, there is nothing in the source material that backs this up for me, but I do think it's possible that police see Don and Candace as potential suspects in Summer's disappearance at this point. And like, clearly you can't leave any more children in the care if that is their suspicion here, right? I mean, if this is true, it clearly toes the line of so much proof that we can push to remove their children from their care, but not enough proof to arrest them for it, right?
Yeah, and I never thought of that reasoning of they could be suspects in the case, but that would make a lot of sense if they're slowly building a case against the parents. Mm-hmm. That is really interesting. And honest, man.
Again, if we're going off on this rabbit hole here, like that to me says like you suspect them that much that you're willing to do this, but like, you know, but you just can't prove it yet. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, whatever they have, like they have enough evidence of this, because if they are truly victims in all of this, like why would you re-victimize them by taking the rest of their children away?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you have to have, and like I can't imagine, like I don't know enough about this drunken incident to really talk about it, but I can't imagine just like some drunken disorder situation, you know, pops up and there's like, yep, taking the kids, unless they use that as an excuse for something much bigger, because a serious incident, obviously, you know, it could include, you know, potentially getting rid of one of your children.
Yeah. Well, my heart goes out to those 3 kids because, wow, like that's so much to go through in less than a year.
Seriously.
Your sister going missing.
In less than a month.
In less than a month.
Gosh,
yeah, your sister going missing and then being taken from your parents and possibly
Yeah.
undergoing some kind of drunken incident. But I feel like normally when a department comes to remove children from a family, especially I assume they're
Yeah.
younger children, it means that shit's
Right.
about to hit the fan. Like something is going on, whether it's
Right.
how they're parenting or there's a case being built up, like you said.
Yeah. Well, and just to reiterate here, like the Department of Children's Services, like, because I've worked with this very department before, like every time I've asked them about any sort of specific case, they always say, we can't say anything about this case. Like, we can't even acknowledge that a case exists. And so, like, the fact that they are able to talk about this potentially so publicly is a little, like, interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is, like, again, screams to me, like, that there's something going on directed at those 2, even if it's unfounded at this point, right? Even if there's just enough there for police to suspect them, but not enough to prove it or put them away for it. Like that says that like there are people looking at them and like pushing this in the right direction. So that way, like we're not risking this happening to 3 more little kids.
Yeah, that's really, really sketchy. And I have a question that you might know because you cover crime a lot more than I do as a reporter. You know, say theoretically during this huge search of 1,100 people, if a tip is found, the FBI they don't have to disclose it to the public or to like the media, correct? Like if they find something, they're like, shoot,
no.
this is...
Yeah. On that though, that's a great point. Yeah, because at this point, because in terms of investigative process, like they put out like just enough to like frankly like satisfy people like me who like are constantly bugging them about these kinds of things, but also enough to like that will help them, get what they need, right? So the red truck, that kind of thing, like that is going to hopefully get them enough tips
Right.
to get this information, but you don't want to put so much out there, that you potentially risk, Don and Candace like buying the first ticket out of freaking Dodge, and so that is like you really want to toe the line there very carefully. And with that being said too, like oftentimes, the family doesn't even really know much more than the media does.
Mm-hmm.
I've covered so many cases where, I'll do a press conference with somebody and ask them a question and the police will answer it and then go to the family member and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And they're like, I don't even know about that until you told me about that. And so it's like, so like that, like sometimes they're just as in the dark as we are.
Interesting. And again, this is a small town. So, there could have been a townsperson that went to the FBI or some kind of officer and said, look, Don and Candace are sketchy as heck. We they live in the middle of nowhere. Like they're weird. Again, I'm not insinuating anything, but I'm just saying that the FBI could have gotten some kind of tip perhaps.
Yeah.
And they would have just been like, let's keep it on the DL, And at the end of the day, they could just be loving parents that are a little off or something's off, but that's a really big red flag.
Yeah, huge red flag. And we're not the only ones thinking that way either. Online sleuths run the rampant, pointing the finger at Don and Candace. But to be clear, again, they've never been charged with anything at this point, even to this day. Any speculation is just that, speculation. But the speculation was enough to push investigators to tell the public to calm down with the town gossip, the rumors, and the unfounded accusations. In all, investigators have received thousands of tips about Summer Wells, and police are issuing public statements saying most of those tips are totally bogus and the result of social media rumors and not actual facts.
Yeah, as a reporter, it's really interesting to see those kind of older true crime stories versus the ones that you and I cover nowadays, mostly you, because social media can either be a great resource or such a hindrance on these officials that are trying to investigate.
Yeah. And and we're going to get to a little bit later on about how this like actually affected this case. So hold that thought too. But by October, police say they have found zero evidence that Summer was abducted from her home. And they say this case is so odd because there's absolutely no evidence of any kind that may point to where Summer is. And TBI investigators spell it out pretty plainly in a video that the agency ends up posting to social media.
Typically on an Amber Alert and the ones that I've been involved in since I have been over this program, within a couple of days, we have a tip or a lead or have an idea if they've been abducted, if they may be left into the woods. Somebody saw something that leads us hopefully to get an answer to where the child went or if they were taken. We're going to have some tip or lead. And that is the frustrating part for law enforcement in this case and for the public. We will continue to investigate and search for Summer. In the public side, there may not be as much media attention given to this case, but that does not mean that we stop what we're doing. We will continue to use every resource we have that we can utilize to try to find Summer.
So the TBI made a really good point that they were like, usually when we open such a deep investigation, it's because we received a tip that truly is alarming, and we've seen that, you and I, here in Tennessee. And it is a strange case in the sense that they're going off of one parent's word that the kid is missing and the basement door was open, but they're taking it so seriously, which it is, it has every right to be taken seriously. But, usually I feel like there's certain protocols when it comes to missing and endangered children alerts and things like that. But clearly, like, something is off. Just something feels off about all of this.
And like the investigator was saying too, like at this point in the investigation, like usually we know something, and like kind of what she was talking about, like at this point we really don't know anything. Like we don't know. Like, we don't have a trace of where Summer went. And so it's like, sure, like what happened to her as soon as we walked out the door? It just seemed like she vanished into thin air.
And there's so much great technology nowadays, you know, like we talked about social media and the role it plays in investigations nowadays. But on top of that, these investigative teams, they have phenomenal technology that can really help uncover a lot of things that they couldn't cover back, you know, way back in the day. You'd think they would find something, just a
Yeah.
little something.
Yeah, well, the TBI posts this, really in-depth series of blog posts and updates on its website talking about Summer's case. And yes, we are going to link that to that on our website and in our show notes too. In one of those updates, the TBI has this list of frequently asked questions. And in one of those updates, the agency says that it's possible that Summer wandered off into the woods and became lost in the mountainous and rough terrain surrounding the house. And that is really the assumption they are operating under at this point. They have no other choice. That same month, the case takes a bit of a strange turn. So, Angela, I hope you have an extra bottle handy because this is where things get oh so strange.
I'm ready.
In October of 2021, Don and Candace create a YouTube page as a way to put out public messages about their daughter's case. Here, Angela, let me play a couple of them for you, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
I just wanted to thank everyone for helping to find my daughter. We love and miss her with all our hearts. Nothing will ever be the same without her. We're so very thankful for your love, prayers, and all that you all do. Just thinking about you all coming together for my daughter brings tears to my eyes. I pray we can save her. Love and prayers to all. Thank you. We just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone who's helping us to try and find our daughter. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks for the prayers and the love. Love overcomes a lot of evil and hate. So thank you. It's so important. Thank you. God bless y'all. The billboards and everything that y'all put up for us, not for us, but for our daughter's sake. Thank you. God bless y'all. We hope and pray to God we can find our daughter. We can't thank you enough. There's nothing we can do to thank you all enough, but just to thank you and praise our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
You know, I feel like a lot of people, when they hop on the internet and see these kind of videos, they really judge by how the person is talking, how the person is looking. Like everyone thinks they're a psychologist of some sorts and they try to make their own assumptions, which I really do try to avoid because everyone has a different story, background, all that jazz. But I will say, I just think it seemed like okay, tell me if I should take this out, but this kind of almost reminds me of the case of Kaylee and Casey in Florida,
Yep,
where
exactly where
like Casey put out her statements, but everyone was watching going, that's so ingenuine. That's so ingenuine because there wasn't any emotion behind it. But again, I don't want to jump to conclusions. It could just be how they're raised in their background and,
Yeah, well, and to your point, everyone copes differently, sure, but they, and at this point, the rumors were running rampant around town, across the country, and so these videos did not do them any justice at all in terms of if again, assuming that we don't know exactly what happened, assuming that they're totally innocent, right? We have to assume that they're totally innocent, that to me does not scream innocent mom and dad at all. And so again, I'd say that all that to say, if you why do you think that helps you at all? You would think that if you're going to make a YouTube channel to cry out for help, cry out for help. You're saying this bring all the love and support, it brings tears to my eyes. But you sound like the most monotone man on the face of the planet. There are no tears in your eyes. It doesn't look like you cried a day in your life.
Yeah, it just didn't seem very genuine. And, I totally understand that maybe his anxiety was a little high and he was like, holy cow, the whole country thinks I killed my daughter. And I can understand why you're like, whatever I do or don't do, the internet's going to scour me. But again, at the same time, I just don't understand the point of putting out a video when you very clearly aren't helping create,
Right.
I guess, a case for yourself in the sense of that you're innocent. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that's
I feel
exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Like, this doesn't help you. Like, this only, like, I'm sure only puts more, I mean, for doing my research, like, this only put more doubt on you, like, looking at this, because I'm like, you don't seem, like, especially Candace, like, didn't say a word, like, she was just, like, looking, like, standing there, like, staring, like, she was in the second video, and so I don't understand, like, what was the point of putting this out here? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I feel like when you watch a lot of these true crime stories and you find out who did it, it was, you know, whenever you see the person that did do it, you find out who it was, and then you watch back whenever they made media appearances or posted videos, they were always very ingenuine statements. That's a very common theme, which is a sad theme, but it is a common theme.
And like his eyes, like both of them, like looked like they weren't really even like looking at anything, like they were just so totally glossed over.
It just gives you that gut feeling of like, this isn't good, you know?
Well, you know, something else happens this month too, Angela, in the Wells household. So let's go there too. You know, that month in October, Don Wells is arrested on a DUI charge. Now, Don has a pretty decent criminal history. He was arrested previously for possession of a firearm while intoxicated, and he's actually on parole at the time. So this is like an obvious violation of that parole. So when he shows up to court in November, he's arrested for violating the terms of his probation.
Okay, and that does not at all help his case with the whole internet just going after him already.
Right. Well, and like, to be clear, like, you know, this, like, these, like, crimes, like, don't necessarily, like, point to someone who's capable of murdering their daughter. Like, okay, like, sure, if there was, like, assault charges or, like, serious crimes like that, like, you know, attempted murder, that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, like, his daughter goes missing, like, that I feel like is an obvious move, but, like, DUI does not equal murderer. You know what I mean? And so,
no.
Like, yeah, so like keep that in mind, but like still, like what you said, like doesn't, in terms of the public thinking about you the way that they're thinking about you, that doesn't help.
No, it does not help at all. And it's just, I don't know, like if you're Don's wife as well, like why would you let your husband drive under the influence while on parole? I don't know. Just a lot of this doesn't make sense.
Well, and so to be clear, like I don't believe they're married. They have two different last names, so I'll just put that out there too. But I also like they have a very interesting relationship background, and we're going to get there too. So hold that thought, drink that wine. We have a lot to get to.
I was going to say, I feel like I don't have enough wine for how many times you said, hold that thought.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are a lot of thoughts because we're building to something, Angela. We are definitely building to something. Well, you know, I have to say, you know, this detail is pretty off point. And normally I don't bring up these kinds of details in investigations about like these, you know, erroneous charges because like who really cares? Like the whole point of this podcast is to help solve murders and missing people cases and other crimes, you know, not to embarrass their families or what have you, especially people who may or may not even have anything to do with this, probably are just victims in all of this. But this detail does get brought up again, and I think it's actually really important. So that's why I'm bringing it up here. But again, Angela, hold that thought. That same day that Don is arrested in court, WJHL, the ABC and CBS affiliate in Johnson City, Tennessee, reports that they discovered that a gag order has been issued for the DCS case involving Don and Candace's other kids.
Okay, for those of us that aren't super crime junkies, a gag order. Explain that a little more for us.
Yeah, so you'll remember from episode 1, we talked about gag orders there. So that was the Ray Rivera case. We talked about gag orders in the sense of, you know, issuing them privately. So this was a situation, episode 1, where the boss of a company issued a gag order to its employees. About that case, go listen to episode 1. We explained all that, you know, pretty extensively. But you know, so in this case scenario, we're talking about a public entity, which changes things just a little bit, but it basically says that you can't talk about this case publicly or to anybody. Like, and if we find out that you talk about this to anybody, like that's a whole lawsuit waiting to happen. And so the DC, but again, like I'm puzzling, like the DCS case that like that's what the gag order is placed onto, because again, like what we just talked about, like DCS cases are not public record any way, shape, or form, like because they're children, like they're very much so kept hush hush, like we don't talk about this. Sometimes not even the families know what happened to these kids or these cases. So the fact that they felt like a gag order was necessary, I side-eye that big time.
Yeah, this is so weird. And again, all these decisions are being made and we're not getting any explanation as to why these things are happening.
Yeah.
So this is just so interesting.
Well, and I have to imagine that the TBI is behind the scenes, again, knowing a lot more than what we know at this point. I mean, obviously they do, but knowing a whole lot more than what we know or what we could even begin to hypothesize is happening in this case. And again, the fact that they got DCS involved, going back to the point I said before, what's the point of doing that unless you are afraid of things leaking out that could affect another part of this investigation? And
right,
so
exactly.
That to me says that somehow these boys, somehow their relationship with their parents, them potentially, because I heard a couple theories about, their situation, somehow you're afraid about whatever's in that file leaking out and potentially harming your investigation in some way, shape, or form until you can prove that or what you think happened.
Yes, and I feel like besides the biggest question of where is Summer and what happened, the second biggest question is, why did you take the other 3 kids?
Yeah.
Why? And then that's the one question that they say, no, nothing.
Yeah. Man, yeah, again, just letting the rumors run rampant. And I know they said that they don't want them, out there, but you're just feeding them at this point. It's almost like feeding them with air, you know what I mean? Because it's you're not really giving them anything, but because you're not giving them anything, it's just letting it grow and grow. So, man, I don't know.
Well, and again, we're in a generation where social media is a thing. Word travels fast. I see true crime on TikToks, people that aren't even reporters talking about this. And
you
then
have to nip it in the bud at some point, right?
Right. And this decision seems very much okay, more theories are going to fly, more false hints are going to be given or tips, and it just, I don't understand the reasoning, but we're also not the TBI.
Yeah. Well, and it's, so true, but it's also, really complicated too, because I'm sure that the answer probably does satisfy some sort of question, and maybe it doesn't have anything to do, maybe the information doesn't affect the case at all, but, the reality of the situation is that the children are involved at this point, right? And so you can't just talk, air all their everything in their lives out there, because you have to there are laws that protect children very vehemently. And so that's I'm sure it's a very difficult teeter-totter, because maybe they do want to answer these questions, but they simply can't, because you're putting these kids safety and privacy at risk.
Jeez, that's just, and you wonder too about why the kids were taken. Was it 1, they thought they were in danger with the parents, or 2, did they think they had a lead on the outside person that took Summer, and that person could strike again? You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to think about that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of layers here, and there's a layer that you touched on just now, but again, hold that thought, because
we need a drinking game for every time you say "hold that thought."
You do need a drinking game. Hey, you know what? Let's start the crime of one drinking game right now. Let's
okay, every time Liam says "hold that thought," if you're listening, you must take a sip of your wine.
You must take a sip. Okay, let's do that. That's a new rule. You heard it here first. Angela Kim made that rule. Love that. She's trademarking that. So that same month, while Dawn is awaiting trial, Summer's mother and father end up going to the Dr. Phil show with the hopes to extend their reach. Now, this isn't totally out of left field at this point. Summer's mysterious disappearance is a national headline, like what we were talking about, Angela. Now, I really wish I could play this whole interview for you, Angela. I can't. I simply can't. But because I truly and honestly have no idea what to make of any of this. But I'll give you the highlights. How about that?
Okay.
Dr. Phil ends up hiring a couple of body language experts to analyze Dawn and Candace in an interview, and they both sit down for those interviews. Now, remember, at this point, online speculation about the couple was absolutely out there in left field. And so they start asking all sorts of questions, what their relationship was like, what their home life was like, and even more about their boys, who haven't lived with Dawn or Candace for 3 months at this point.
Jeez.
And Dawn says that the boys not living with them ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise.
What?
Because the social media attention got out of hand, leading to some threats from people who were convinced that they had something to do with Summer's disappearance. So Dawn said on the show that he was actually glad that they weren't living there at the time, so they didn't have to be put in harm's way that way. Makes a certain amount of sense.
Okay, yeah. I jumped to conclusions, but that makes sense.
Yeah, but we still don't know why they were actually taken away, so let's keep that in mind.
True.
So this is when Don and Candace both start talking about their past criminal histories, and Don says that they have not always had the most perfect marriage. No, actually, Candace called the police on Don in 2020 for domestic assault.
Oh.
There aren't a ton of details about the situation out there, but Candace did end up filing an order of protection against him, but later Candace asks for that order to be dismissed, and the charges against Don were dropped 2 months before Summer ended up going missing.
Interesting. You know, I feel like domestic assault is such a tricky topic, and I don't even want to, like delve into that too hard because it could be the woman, it could be the man, you never know.
Sure.
But it sounds like either way, that's not a very healthy family overall.
No.
It sounds like these kids were not living with parents that were, looking out for them.
Yeah, and again, let's get to like the other part of this Dr. Phil interview.
Hold that thought.
that will support that theory, Angela.
Okay.
So, again, I don't usually bring this kind of stuff up, but I do think it's relevant later. So again, hold that thought.
And drink.
So those experts start to really press on the couple, specifically on Candace. And the reason why they say they're doing this, frankly, is shocking. The experts say that they don't necessarily believe, based on the couple's body language, that Don and Candace had anything to do with Summer's disappearance directly. But they do feel as though Candace knows more than what she's letting on. And that leads the analysts to start prodding more and more. They start asking Don and Candace about past run-ins with the law. And so they have a hunch about this based on their experience and their legal expertise here. And they start asking about an organization that is called the Cornbread Mafia.
Okay, out of context, I love that name, the Cornbread Mafia.
Yeah. So, man, listen, I'll never get over living in Tennessee, but this is really that's really it.
Yeah, I mean,
I have nothing else to say about that.
Tennessee has the biggest cornbread festival in the world, so of course we have a cornbread mafia. I didn't know that, but
I guess so.
Okay.
Well, so let me tell you all about this cornbread mafia, Angela.
Please.
So the cornbread mafia is this shadowy kind of crime organization. They are based in Kentucky, but now they are predominant pretty much throughout the southeastern United States, specifically along the I-75 corridor through Georgia. The mafia was first known to be publicized in 1989 when 70 Kentucky farmers were busted on a network of 30 farms for carrying what law enforcement said to be 200 tons of weed, according to Cornbread Hemp. Whatever that means. The organization continued and grew throughout the years, and now they are not only known for moving drugs, but also could be involved in human trafficking operations, according to Dr. Phil's expert.
Why do Don and Candace, with 4 children, have connections with a drug-dealing mafia?
Well, and to be clear, they're not, they never
Allegedly.
it's never confirmed that they have this. Yeah, on the show they claim to know nothing about this organization whatsoever. But it's still kind of interesting that that the experts made this connection.
Yeah,
because how, why, if they do, again, like you said, how do they have this connection to this organization?
Yeah.
It seems so, again, left field. It's where the heck did this come from?
Because don't get me wrong, Dr. Phil, I get it's a produced show, and Dr. Phil is a character himself. But when you bring in experts to analyze people and they are picking up on stuff, it's just, that's so interesting.
And especially for this child's parents. You know what I mean? That is such a huge, again, red flag.
Red flag.
The biggest one ever. Yeah, huge red flag. Because again, we're and every other story when except for episode 6 of this podcast, the Mariah Woods case, the child goes missing and you're supposed to be caring for the family, sympathizing for them. And so the fact that kind of turned into these experts saying no, we think that they know something about this and potentially have these connections to people who may be involved. or at least, and they're not saying everything about it.
Yeah.
Like, man.
And we have to remember, if you didn't watch the video, if you just like heard it on the podcast, but if you watch it, either way, like, you know, Candace never talks in that second video with Dawn. It's just Dawn the whole time, and Candace is just staring at the camera but saying nothing.
Yeah, because even in this Dr. Phil interview, which we're also going to link to in our show notes and on our website, you know, she gives like very short, like one word answer kind of situations, and so I'm like it seems very stoic. And maybe she just isn't good on camera. Like maybe she's much more, you know, empathetic, you know, at home, like when she's like surrounded by loved ones and like is showing a lot more, you know, a lot more emotion than she does on camera, because that can really change things for somebody. But like you said, like it just gives weird vibes. And especially now that they're pointing fingers at her. Ugh.
And I'm not a mother, but I feel like for every mother that I have interviewed when it comes to their child being in danger in some sort of way, and I don't know about you, Liam, but those moms, like, they don't get necessarily emotional every time, but you can just, like, you can feel it when you interview them that it affects them. And I didn't get that from the YouTube video with Candace.
No. And again, like, everyone grieves differently. Like, this is clearly, like, a very hardened part of the country. Like, keep that in mind. She's not your average, you know, perky mom. Like, let's, like, put that in that perspective.
Yes. And you know, not to, you know, bring up anything too controversial, but in these kind of rural parts of the Southeast, you know, it's hard for these people to go on national news outlets, local news outlets, and feel like they can trust the people that are covering them and that they're not going to twist what they're saying. Again, that's a whole different topic. But that being said, I could also understand if Dawn and Candace's guards are up a little bit when they're trying to get the word out about Summer, you know?
Yeah. Well, and especially to that point too, like at this point, like seeing it from their perspective, like the amount of speculation that surrounds them, like just from people online,
right?
Like I'm sure that their guards are up a little bit to a certain extent, because maybe at first they were very hysterical, and now freaking podcasters like us, you know, ripping them apart at or share, like looking at their every single angle, like really combing through their behavior with a fine tooth comb, and have all this like rumors spread about them that they maybe know aren't true, or so
but again, like you said, at the end of the day, like, they're just not helping themselves, you know what I mean? Like, they're just almost submitting more evidence in a sense, whether it's good or bad. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and like to that point too, like so I go back too, because I know I've been referencing a lot of like past episodes, but episode 12, Darlie Routier, I like the silly string video. I don't know if you've seen this, but like it's like that is like, to me, like, because she is like the most like feminine, like a cute, mother, at least on the surface. And so then she has this silly string video that is just like so bonkers out of left field that like nobody would do. And so like, again, like you so maybe people just cope differently, so it's like you can't apply the same set of rules to everybody, I guess, is what I'm trying to say there.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different background, and you just never know where someone's head is at and what their background kind of, I guess, leads them to when it comes to that mentality. But that being said, you're on the Dr. Phil show, you're having body language experts, so people that experience many different types of people saying, this is fishy, something is up.
Yeah. Well, and people who should be looking at you very objectively, right? From a purely investigative, scientific, psychological
They are
standpoint.
Literally trained to look at you in an unbiased fashion. So that is...
it's not just Liam giving you the side eye at this point. It's the investigators, it's the experts giving you the side eye at this point.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so these questions were clearly too much for Candace to handle. She ends up walking out of the interview with Dr. Phil's experts, and that did not help the rampant social media rumors either. The theories went flying that Candace must have been involved with this so-called core cornbread mafia at some point in her past, and that was why she walked off, because she knew that they must have been involved in some way. But Candace says she walked off because the thought of her daughter being caught up in that was just too much for her to handle, because she said it just sounded so awful. But even after she explains herself, the analysts insist that Candace is not being entirely truthful with them. They say they don't think they had anything to do with Summer's disappearance, again, like we said, but they believe Candace specifically knows something that she's just not saying.
And again, these are unbiased experts giving their opinion from their analysis, from their, I guess, data almost. But that is just, that's just, I get a mother getting upset at like impersonal questions, walking off, but I don't know. I have a weird gut feeling, Liam.
Yeah, I do. Me too. And, again, she says that she doesn't have anything to hide. In that interview, she says, nope, I'm telling you everything I know. Like, I don't know what you want from me, but I don't know. I just feel like I always lean more on the scientists at this point, to tell me, like what is actual human behavior. And if that's true, if she's really not saying everything, like, why isn't she saying everything? Like, you would think that you would show like such a, a certain amount of body language that, there's no question that you're saying everything to help, find your daughter. And these people are saying, no, like, you're holding something, you're hiding something, right, and we want to know what it is.
So again, okay, so Dawn and Candace, mostly Candace, they're getting grilled by these experts, but like, do they have a chance to kind of say their own theory, like what they think happened to Summer, like what they actually theorize happened? Because we haven't heard that yet, have we?
No, we really haven't. They said from the beginning that they think that she was kidnapped, but they do actually end up saying what they think happened right on Dr. Phil. Don says that he thinks it was a former employee of his. Don manages for a construction company, and the day before Summer went missing, he says that he fired this guy for coming to work high on meth. Don says he can't prove it, but he's so sure that this guy had something to do with his daughter's disappearance.
Okay, that's a pretty solid theory, but
sure,
in my opinion, and I don't know because I've never done meth, just saying that, on the podcast, never done meth. But if someone who has done meth, who is on drugs, there's no way when you're on drugs you could kidnap a 5-year-old and not leave any evidence behind in a rural area full of brush. Like, am I making that up? Am I being naive? Or,
No, I don't think so. But I also think, too, if you kind of relate it back to the cornbread mafia, so, like, maybe, like, both can be true, like, what, like, Don and Candace are saying and what the investigators are saying, in that, like, like, maybe, like, the cornbread mafia, like, maybe this guy, this fired employee, like, does have something to do with the cornbread mafia, and, like, this was, like, their retaliation against it.
Ooh.
And so, like, maybe they did know a little bit more about what was going on, but like didn't say it fully 100% because like maybe they didn't want to believe it almost.
Yeah.
So it kind of, maybe it's like kind of a situation where like both can be true.
Yeah. I could totally see that. Again, small town, like, like everyone knows everyone, and small towns have secrets.
Oh, sure do.
That's so interesting, though. That's a great theory, and I'm kind of scared to Google Cornbread Mafia because I feel like the Cornbread Mafia will, like, find my search history and come track me down.
They're going to try to recruit you. So true. Well, Angela, like, this story is odd for so many reasons, as you've already seen, but I have to say, it only gets more odd. So buckle up because we have so much more to talk about here.
I'm so ready.
By the beginning of 2022, Don ends up going to jail to serve time for violating his probation. He ends up serving about 6 months total. By March of that year, the Hawkins County Sheriff suddenly issues a public statement asking for more help from the public because they say Don and Candace are no longer being fully cooperative with their investigation.
Interesting. So it goes from a lot of volunteers, a lot of tips, to gag order on the 3 children, to they want more help from the public, but at the same time, there's all these social media tips that are not useful. This case is a hot mess.
It really is a hot mess though, seriously, because think about like the thousands of people who wrote in, and it's like you're just reading something crazy off Facebook and like you decide to write it in, and it's like that's not helping, like it's really stalling things. But as far as Don and Candace go, like, so first of all, Candace says that this is totally BS. Like, they've been helping the whole time. Like, they totally deny, like, they don't know why they say this, but the sheriff's office says they do. So I don't know if this is something along the lines of, like, maybe they start asking more regarding this to this Dr. Phil interview, and there's like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, and they take that as not being fully cooperative. But yeah, it just seems. It seems like a very, again, it's just another step along the way where we're just like certainly led to believe that they have their eyes on Don and Candace in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there's some kind of beef right there.
Yeah.
There's some kind of beef.
Well, so by June of that year, as the first anniversary of Summer's disappearance looms, investigators say they feel no closer to finding her than they did a year ago. They say all of this despite thousands of hours worked, numerous search warrants executed, almost 200 interviews conducted, and more than 2,000 tips received. But those tips, investigators said, were doing more harm than good, like we were talking about in most cases. The tips came from bogus, misleading, and unsubstantiated claims online, and the TBI said these bad tips have had a, quote, major impact on the investigation.
Yeah, you did mention that earlier, and we have seen that in real time, too, as reporters. You know, bad tips can really deter an investigation, and it can also distract investigators from following a trail in a timely fashion.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
Well, yeah, and because it's kind of pisses me off, frankly, because it's like you like people who are writing this in like are clearly, because at this point, like, again, social media rumors are running rampant, and so it just seems to me like these people who are writing into this stuff like are more interested in proving themselves right, proving their theories right, than actually finding the truth. And so that's kind of the problem that we're having here. But also too, on that front, like we're talking about like from an investigative standpoint, like where like it's really hard because you get these tips and especially when you're at the point where you, again, where they said they don't feel like they're any closer than they were a year ago, like you get to a point where you get one of these tips and you have to follow through on it. You know what I mean? Like, cause what else are you gonna do? So yeah. So, I mean, it's like the social media crap like really pisses me off because, again, like all we should care about is finding Summer.
Right. And again, it comes from a lot of people that think they know more than they do.
They're
making theories.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Think they're being helpful, think they're caring, but they're really not.
So PSA to all of you listening.
Yeah, stop it. Hey, stop it. Cut it out.
Stop it. No, but in all seriousness though, it is really sad too, because it's just kind of like, where is that fine balance of, you know, back in like the 70s, the 60s, even, you know, the 90s, the 80s, there wasn't social media, but it was much harder to find these criminals because of the lack of evidence and like, I guess, like citizens. Yeah. But now it's like, it's too much. It's oversaturated. So it's, where's that fine balance for us?
Well, and like kind of like a blessing and a curse too, right? Because like you were talking about before, like social media can help you track down leads, can help you find new people, like can help you track locations and that kind of thing. But in this case, it's just total BS, right? Because people are just posting whatever the heck they want, whatever they think is happening, making crap up probably. And people are falling for it. And I can also see too how if I'm someone who cares about this young girl, even if I never met her before, like I just like this, like the story just touches me for whatever reason. I see this tip on social media and I want to send it to police because I want to help. But obviously it's not really doing what you think it's doing. So that kind of, you know, is, you know, take that what it is. But then from the investigative standpoint too, like they literally had to say, you know, stop like if you get a tip and you send it, if we see a tip, if you send in a tip that came from social media in any way, shape, or form, like we're not even going to read it. Like we're just going to throw it in the trash. Like that's how bad it got.
Wow. That's just, and again, we've heard of true crime stories where you get a tip, it seems like nothing, and it's everything, which is so sad because they're getting so many tips. It's how do you narrow that down?
Yeah, right. Well, and you have to, especially in this small part of the country, right? Like, I'm sure they don't have investigators at their disposal, you know. So like you have to take resources. Like, sure, they're getting help from the TBI, FBI, like other agencies, like sure, but you still have to prioritize, you know, resources that way. You can't just follow up on every, you know, Facebook posts that may or may not be true.
Yeah. And so I guess all we know is that there's a possible cornbread mafia and they possibly drive a red Toyota pickup truck, but we don't even know that.
And we don't even know about the cornbread mafia. Yeah, so true. We really don't know anything. So in August, you know, Don was, continuing to serve time in jail, and he makes this public plea from behind bars, you know, still grasping at straws, just like we are at this point, Angela. He writes a letter addressed directly to his daughter, Summer. And Angela, I'm hoping that you're going to be able to read this for us.
Okay, you put this at the at the second half of the podcast when we're several glasses of wine in, but I will read it.
Do your best.
Okay, this is a letter. Dear Summer, I don't know if there's even the remotest chance of you ever seeing this letter, but I'm going to write it hoping you will. First of all, I want you to know that I love you with all my heart. I've never missed someone as much as I miss you. My heart aches constantly, and then the thought of someone mistreating you puts so much anguish and fear for you that I can barely breathe at times. I beg God for your life and break out in tears constantly. I'm very glad I got to spend 5 years with you, but now my life feels like snow, rain, and drizzle, never ending. You are the highlight of my entire miserable existence on this earth. I love you, Summer, with every fiber of my being, sweetheart. I love you, and I will never give up on you, and one day I will see you again. Always and forever, your earthly dad, Father. I almost cried reading that. That's really sad.
Jeez. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
That's really sad.
It does feel like he pours everything he has into this letter, right? And so that that does kind of hurt, I guess, a little bit. I guess I'm wondering but I am kind of wondering what his purpose is in sending this out for the world to see. Maybe it is for him to just kind of start saying, stop thinking about me, start thinking about Summer. This is what I really feel about this whole situation. So yeah.
Jeez, I mean,
you are the highlight of my entire miserable existence on this earth. Okay.
I get the vibes that perhaps Dawn didn't have the best upbringing or the best life growing up. And it really seems like, when Summer went missing, things, I wouldn't say hit rock bottom. I don't want to jump to presumes. But it sounds like he didn't handle it very well. Mm-mm. And it sounds like he didn't know how to cope with those emotions. And I don't know, maybe Dawn has a sneaking suspicion or knows that Candace, I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? It could come from so many different things.
Well, and so the thought of someone mistreating you, that's the first time that I heard of the possibility of her being held captive somewhere. And so that is really interesting that's where his brain goes. But I could also see from a parent's perspective, going to the worst possible case scenario. And that is just simply what keeps you up at night.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, when he says, I will never, the last line gets to me, I will never give up on you. Mm-hmm. And one day I will see you again. I feel like he presumes she's dead,
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe that's presumptuous, but
maybe, but also we don't freaking know. We don't like we said, we don't know anything more than what we knew on June 15th, 2021. We're in May of 2023 at this point. We simply don't know anything more. And so we're in this point of the story, we're at August of 2022. And so we really just don't know. We have no idea what happened to Summer. We have absolutely no idea. So
no,
anything's possible. Anything.
And again, there's no, like you said, there's no updates. Usually within a year, okay, we know she was kidnapped. She know this happened, but there's nothing confirmed.
Yeah. Well, and
that's also, so weird.
And also too, in these kind of cold cases, and so actually let me rephrase that, because the TBI does not say this is a cold case. They say that they are still actively looking for a Summer, even to this day. And so for these kinds of cases, right, once they get to a point where they feel like they're stalling and they haven't really gotten, a whole lot of more information or evidence, they'll put out just a little, again, kind of what we were talking about before, just a little bit of evidence, just enough evidence to, try to get people to call in and try to get more tips that way. And they haven't done that. They really, honestly, ever since that red truck, we have not heard from investigators, and I can only imagine that's probably because they don't have anything for us to share. And like we said, actually they said flat out that they don't feel any closer to finding Summer than they did the day that she went missing.
I mean, with how secretive the TBI has been, and just all these investigative bureaus have been, I feel like the cornbread mafia could be real because I feel like on the TV shows, at least, whenever you see a mafia or whatever involved in a case, like, you know, these agencies just shut down and they're like, okay, like handle it under the water. Like, we're going to be subtle. I don't know. The wine's kicking in, but
we're solving this thing.
We're solving this thing with a bottle of broken Anchorage wine.
Yeah.
No, but I just feel like whenever there's something secretive from an agency, it's because there's a much bigger power that the public is a danger for the public to know about, you know?
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, and especially you don't want to like, you know, because I think you might have mentioned this, like there's a bigger fish to fry, right? And so maybe that's possible. It's possible. So
yeah, but I just want to know. So okay, so Don sends out this letter. He seems heartfelt, but like, what is Candace doing this whole time?
Well, all while Don is serving time in jail, Candace apparently is admitted to the hospital on at least 4 different occasions for heart problems. And when Don is eventually released from jail in late 2022, he speaks with a reporter from WJHL and says something really interesting. He continues to plead for help from the public and offers some updates into the case, continuing to insist that someone abducted their little girl a year and a half ago. But he also says that he still hasn't seen his boys since they were taken from him and his wife in July of 2021. He says he has not been allowed to communicate with any of his 3 older boys, and neither has his wife since he was released from jail. But he says while he was in jail, Candace was allowed to speak with them periodically.
Why? What? I thought, okay, wait. It seems like from the Dr. Phil show, Candace is the more fishy one to look at. Because they didn't really look at Dawn, right?
Right. So that's where my brain at this point just kind of goes to a totally different direction, right? Because the whole time I've been like thinking about it as like they took the boys because they think that Dawn and Candace had something to do with Summer's disappearance. Like that's the theory here. But now that fact makes me think from just strictly from a you know, crime reporter's perspective, like if this is true that Candace was really allowed to speak with them in jail, like that to me says that the reason they were taken away did in fact had something to do with like Dawn's episodes. You know, because that is really the only thing that, you know, like would make any sort of sense in that like Dawn was not allowed to communicate with them whatsoever. But Candace was when Dawn wasn't around.
It honestly just sounds like both of these parents, I don't know, just have some kind of secret they're not telling or something sketchy is going on, but I think they're like different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
like, I don't think Dawn and Candace are in on this together in any way, shape, or form, but I think each of them may have some kind of secret.
Yeah, I think that they do. Again, I think that they do know something more than what they're saying publicly, and probably more than what they're telling investigators at this point. Because again, they have a very checkered past, and so like, those type of people probably, even when their children are involved, unfortunately, like don't trust police 100%. And so like maybe them saying, you know, too much about what they're involved in, you know, behind the scenes, like maybe they think could jeopardize something for them. So,
yeah. I mean, it's just so like, I feel like if my mind was in one place, it's going 500 different directions because of how much evidence there is. But also, I don't know. My mind is going everywhere because the theories are just popping up like left and right. I don't know.
Oh, Angela, you look exactly where I was in this point. You look exactly like that. I was like, my hands were on my head. And I was like, what am I even going to say? Yeah, man. Yeah. Angela, you know, this feels like a really weird place to stop, but it's where we are, honestly, at this point. Summer Wells is still a missing little girl, and the efforts to find her continue even to this day. There have been several large-scale searches of the property and the surrounding area since Summer seemed to vanish into thin air from her home. And there are several, and I mean several, theories floating around the internet about what may or may not have happened to Summer. Theories ranging from the family having something to do with it, a stranger, a cornbread mafia member, etc., etc., etc. It's not that I don't care about those theories. You all know I love it.
No.
But those theories have had enough airtime we're done with those. So instead of
Yes.
giving those theories even more space to run rampant, I asked Ashley for more help. I asked her to give me some more thoughts on some of the key points of this investigation and overall some of her thoughts on the Wells family. And this is what she had to say.
I think Summers' brothers being taken by Department of Children's Services, or DCS, was the right move. It's hard because we don't know what happened to Summer, but we do know that something bad happened while under her parents' supervision or caregivers or Wells family supervision. And perhaps it's unsafe for those boys to have stayed there. I don't know much about where they went once they were taken, meaning if they're in foster families or if they are in an orphanage, if they've been split up, if they're together. I truly don't know. But I do feel strongly that their care and well-being is probably safer in a different caregiver's eyes or watch. I had little to no interaction with Summer's parents, Candace and Don Wells, but it's not because I didn't try. One of the first things I did when I was assigned this story was message Candace the first day of the search on Facebook, like a lot of reporters do in the world. They start with Facebook. Found her profile, sent her a message, never heard back, which isn't uncommon or anything because sometimes that just doesn't happen. The most interaction I had with Candace was attending the prayer vigils for Summer a month, 2 months, and more after that, marking the date of her disappearance. And she would attend before the boys were taken into DCS custody. A couple of them attended. Candace never really had a lot of emotion. She never showed... She was never weeping or filled with tears at any of these prayer vigils. When asked there if she would like to do an interview, she would decline. She didn't, sometimes it seemed as if she didn't really have any emotion, as if she was just there. It was always odd to me. It was odd that I think everyone mourns the loss of a child, whether dead or missing, differently. But I think to have such little emotion from her mom was very odd. What else was always interesting was the way in which she and the boys were dressed. I wouldn't describe Candace looking like a typical mom. Her hair was short, no makeup, often in t-shirts and baggy clothes. It often looked like she was wearing gym clothes, perhaps even male gym clothes. No effort in her appearance, though, knowing that media would be at these types of events. Now, some people would say that's just who she is. That's who she's always been. Other people would say that doesn't seem the way someone would typically dress. I think everyone mourns differently. But I think over the 2 to 3 times I saw her at these prayer vigils, and she would pray or bow her head during appropriate times. I don't recall her singing songs when there were Christian songs being sung. It wasn't disrespectful. It was as if she was there because she had to be there. She knew it would look more poorly if she wasn't. Interestingly, Don never showed to any of these. I only saw Don Wells once. It was in the first week of the search for Summer. He pulled up in his pickup truck to the church where journalists were stationed, the media holding area, if you will, where different media briefings would happen. And it was a church about 5 minutes or so from the Wells family home, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And he pulled up, and I don't recall if he was looking to talk with law enforcement or talk with media. I don't think he did talk with media, but it was just a very quick, got out of his truck, talked with someone briefly, got back in and left. Definitely someone who was gruff, both physical and appearance, as well as just the way he kind of emotionally carried himself. He looked like someone you didn't want to mess with. If I had just seen Candace or Dawn around town, not knowing who they were, what they were up to, my first impression would be that they were just getting by on what they could and doing what they could to support their family.
Sound effect for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm joining you with that after listening to Ashley talk about that.
I need a drink, Liam. Like, I was really trying to listen and pay attention, but that was just so much information to take in.
Was.
And reporters, again, like, we are often taught to be unbiased and to not jump to conclusions. And her information is unbiased, and it's purely, gut feelings, I feel like, and what she saw. And it's just, it sounds like there's just something going on there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I don't even really know what to make of any of that. I think that she just described it very, very well. And it kind of described a lot of even though I never met them in person, described a lot of the instincts that I had just from watching their, videos and seeing their appearances and their interviews and that kind of thing. Because I guess just at the same time, I just keep going back to the fact that this is your daughter. And so I guess I just can't fathom, and maybe it just feels numb at some point, that you're just going through the motions and just not feeling anything. But I can't imagine losing a child in any way, shape, or form and not just being an absolute wreck, no matter if I'm in public, private, on camera, off camera, regardless. And so again,
yes,
I don't know. It just so Ashley just, I think, described it very, very well in that she said, maybe this is just them, but maybe it's just something odd. Maybe it's just something odd.
Either way, something feels off. Something feels very, very off, because even when you're watching a documentary, watching a local news report, and you are seeing these parents where maybe they're, a little nervous to be on camera, nervous to be talking to news outlets. I don't even know how to describe it, but as reporters, you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel the emotion, you feel the pain, you feel whatever it might be. Yeah. And from those YouTube videos and also, those descriptions that Ashley just gave, I don't feel it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you would think at some point that you would feel that. And so
yes.
I guess it just feels odd that throughout all these situations, you don't really I don't feel connected. I don't feel myself in them at all. I will say throughout in the Dr. Phil interview, there were a couple moments where I just I felt they were giving very personable sentiments. So I would encourage everyone to go watch the Dr. Phil interview, because personally, in my opinion, that changed my thoughts on this case, and I'm gonna be completely honest about that. And so I would encourage you. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna link that on our website and in our show notes. So go check that out, because I really think that's gonna change a lot of things for you. But I don't know. It just does not scream to me that they are victims entirely in all this. Again, I don't think that they did anything, but it just does not scream to me that they don't know anything about what happened.
Yeah, I think they know something that went down. I just can't pin my fingers on what exactly went down. And I think that's exactly where the TBI is at right now, too, where they're kind of something sketchy, but we don't have the evidence to prove it. So, but Liam, you are the crime expert, so I want to know, because you always have these phenomenal theories. What do you think happened?
Well, I love a good theory, Angela. And, I just have to say, in my humble opinion, I would not call myself an expert by any means. But, just from doing the research that I have done in this case, I genuinely do not think that Don and Candace had anything to do with Summer's disappearance at all. Here's what I think happened. I think that Dr. Phil's field analysis were exactly spot on. I think that Don and or Candace got involved with the wrong people, whether it was this mysterious fired employee or the cornbread mafia or not, whether it be through, some mysterious organization or not, whether it was years ago or more recently. I think those people felt wronged by Don and Candace or Candace one way or another and did something to Summer to potentially get back at them.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Okay, can I say my theory?
Go for it.
Okay, here's my theory. I think somehow Candace pissed off the cornbread mafia and or was related to them in some way, shape, or form, whether it was like familial ties, she pissed him off, a member of her family pissed him off, something happened. Don had his sneaking suspicions about what was going on, eventually kind of put two and two together, couldn't really confirm it, but he was like, okay, my wife's involved with a very sketchy organization in some way, shape, or form. That caused him to start drinking every now and then essentially something hit the fan, something happened with maybe a member of Candace's family, maybe not directly Candace, but a member of Candace's family and the cornbread mafia or some kind of sketchy mafia organization of some sort. I think they were kind of like, screw you, and they did something to Summer. So I think Dawn and Candace know that it was coordinated and planned, and it wasn't just Summer running away. But I don't think they have the exact details either, but they're also afraid to say too much to the TBI at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I land too a little bit on that last note, because I do feel like I do think that they don't know 100%, because I think at this point they would have pushed them in some sort of direction right now. I really don't think that they know, like, the general direction. I think that they know, or at least, at the very least, again, like you said, have some sort of sneaking suspicion of who was involved, but is afraid to say too much.
Yes,
For whatever reason.
100%. But they also just don't know who to trust. I think that's the big thing. Yeah.
Right. Well, because someone with their kind of past, like, certainly can't trust police. And, someone with their kind of past certainly can't trust, their supposed friends who, may be involved. So.
Right. Small town.
Yeah, small town, sure is. So, I just do have to say that, it's really frustrating. We're at a really frustrating point in this case, because even in May of 2023, it does not feel as though we are any closer to finding Summer than we were 2 years ago. But I am so confident that someone out there knows something. I just know it, Angela. So if you know anything about Summer Wells' disappearance, call the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office at 423-272-7121 or the TBI at 1-800-TBI-FIND or 1-800-824-3463. You can also email the TBI at tips2tbi@tn.gov. And we're also going to link to all those numbers and emails in our show notes.
Yes, but again, 2 notes. 1, do not send false tips. We're like, no to that.
Nothing on social media. Yeah.
But 2, if you have real tips, like, please send them in, because Liam and I are like 4 glasses of wine in, and we're theorizing. We're theorizing.
Yeah. Listen, I need to, in a couple months, I need to do a Summer Wells update, and I need to have more information than what I have right now. And so I very much so plan on keeping, my eye on this case for any sort of developments. I know Angela will too. And so I very much so want to be able to come back to you in a couple of months, hopefully even sooner, but I doubt it's going to be even sooner, and give you guys an update on this case, because I want to know. And I know that you all want to know too, but she deserves it. And so, if her loved ones deserve it, regardless of who's involved, her brothers deserve it, her parents deserve it. everyone deserves answers, deserves closure in this case, regardless of what all happened. And, so just, do your part. I know you all know something, someone out there knows something. So just, do something.
Please.
I'm desperate. We're all desperate.
Please. And
Yeah.
she's a freaking 5-year-old.
And
she's
she's
a
so
5-year-old. Like,
go
come
check us out on
on.
social media and go look at the pictures of Summer, because she is, just this precious little girl. Once you see the pictures of her, I know you're going to want to be just as angry to find out what happened as we are.
She's beautiful. She's beautiful.
She really is. Well, Angela, unfortunately, that is all that we have for you this week. So
No!
Thank you so much for coming on this week and talking with us about this, drinking wine, chit-chatting, catching up, doing the whole gambit.
This was so much fun. Please promise you'll have me back on if they find out what happened to Summer. Because
I will. When we find out what happened to Summer, I certainly will. So, Angela, tell everyone where they can find you and your work online.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow the Company Lab on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. We essentially support startups and entrepreneurs. We accelerate their growth and make them essentially successful in a 12-week time span. We make sure that they have all the resources they need. So if you're an entrepreneur, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, just follow along. We're growing a lot and we're supporting small businesses across the world.
Thank you again so much for coming on, and thank you all so much for listening. We're going to put all of our sources on our website so you can read everything for yourself and probably come up with a few theories too. And if you are enjoying this podcast and are just wondering how you can tell anyone and everyone about it, the best way to help people find this podcast is by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we will see you next week for another episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.